Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Learning Sound Synthesis Spotlight Series interview. I'm here today with Nate Smith. Hi, Nate. It's good to have you here. And Nate and I are going to be talking a little bit about what Nate's journey has been learning modular synthesis over the last few months, maybe even longer, few years. We're going to get into that story. And we're going to break down a few different kind of shifts and ways of working that have been really in particular helpful for you. Is that right, Nate? Yeah, I don't want to spill the beans too early on, but we're going to get into some things that have helped you kind of get toward making more music, learning more modular, and just growing your creative practice in general, which has been really exciting to see. Can you start us off with a little intro? Who you are, what you like to do?
Sure. So I'm Nate. All of my music stuff is called Graveyard Theory. Pretty consistent about that. So been using that moniker for years now. And these days I guess I'm doing ambient music now is the right word. But very abstract pieces, big evolving pieces. I use a lot of found sound, so I do a lot of field recording. And I've kind of in tandem to learning modular synthesis, I've also been learning guitar and kind of music theory and traditional music, I guess. So I've been looking for ways to combine some tonality and music with my more experimental side, mix it all up with field recordings and big
Cool.
soft walls of sound with it.
And you have a background in doing a lot of DIY stuff, right? Like building your own. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So starting in like my freshman year of college, so back in 2006, um, I discovered noise music. So I'd wanted to be a musician for a lot of my youth, but it just wasn't happening. I didn't have any role models really. I didn't know any musicians. I had a string of like awful music teachers through like elementary and middle school, and so when I got to around 2006, I went to my first noise show, and I was like, this is sound that's moving me in the way that music has always moved me, but with this totally different approach, like radical different approach. And what really drew me to it was that there's no rules. Like you could just do whatever sounds interesting, you just do it, whatever compels you. And so that started this very long journey that I've been on of looking for sounds in my environment and repurposing them and kind of doing things, in unexpected ways or in the wrong way. So the way that it manifested for me, I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't solder my own things or anything, but I used to build kinetic instruments. So I would, go dumpster diving for scrap metal and just trash and combine it in weird ways, and then just
That's so
tape
cool.
contact mics all over it, and then do things to it, and then have that go into a bunch of feedback. So I was just trying to do the unexpected, make unexpected sounds come from weird places, and did that sort of thing for a long time. And I loved using like cheap or broken electronics, so like cheapo effects pedals and
Yeah.
um, busted mixers, that kind of stuff.
Oh, I love that. That sounds. I'm so glad you shared more. Thank you. Um, I just love the idea and approach and whatever it is, the mindset of anything can be an instrument. Like sound comes from anywhere. Listen to anything in the right way or in a not even the right way, but in like a curious enough way, and it could be a whole world of music in it, And it sounds like you really had that spirit very much alive in what you were doing, and I've always found that so inspiring. I'm definitely the kind of person who will go to a big hardware store like Home Depot or something, and I'll go into the sheet metal area. I think it's like meant for a siding of how I don't know what you're supposed to do with it, but I'll go in and just like wiggle, wiggle, like
Mhm,
wobble
mhm,
it around, like
mhm,
bang on it. Be like, yes, this one has a very good resonant frequency.
mhm, mhm.
So I feel like I'm in good company. That's awesome. Okay, let's move forward in time. Can you share a little bit more about why modular started to come onto your radar and how that happened?
Yeah, I don't remember when I first became aware of it. And I'll be brutally honest, like the first time I came across it, I was like, this is a hobby for rich people and I don't want to get involved. And it's like it really felt like the antithesis of what I had been trying to do. And
Right.
um I don't feel that way anymore. So I kind of ignored it for a while, and but I just kept seeing it. So I'd go to live shows and I would see somebody had a small, a small setup of modular
Mm-hmm.
synths, and um, I think that I ended up going to KnobCon in Chicago, which is a modular synthesizer convention festival.
Mm-hmm.
And I went because there were some effects pedal makers that I really like who were going to be there. And I went and I was suddenly surrounded by this, this Eurorack stuff, which despite my defensiveness, I was always kind of curious about. And the depth of sound and creativity and flexibility that I saw on display was just, it just blew my mind. And I remember I went to like an open jam session, and every person who performed had such a unique setup that was for them that they had created, and they all sounded totally different. And I realized, like, okay, like, yeah, I'll have to spend a little bit more money than buying crappy effects pedals, but um that spirit of like chasing sounds that speak to
Mm.
you is alive here. And if I learned this, it's going to crack open a whole new universe of sounds that I can now chase. And that was something I had been struggling with at that time, because that more DIY spirit that we talked about, I've been doing that kind of stuff for so long that I was just kind of sick of it. Like I wasn't inspired anymore. And that's not
Yeah.
to say that like there wasn't plenty more to do. It's just for me and my brain and my creative loop, it just wasn't doing
Yeah.
it. So so yeah, I mean that's what put me on the path for Eurorack. And I said, okay, cool, I'll do this. And then I tried to, and I said, this is really hard and I'm lost. And so yeah, hence doing the LSS class.
So then you found your way into learning sound synthesis, which I'm very happy that you found that corner of the internet, which is great. I want to just quickly say for anyone who's watching who might also be feeling a little bit like I'm so curious about modular synth, but like this is inaccessible to me financially or otherwise. There's just a couple things I want to make sure people know about. VCV Rack is a really big one. I'm not sponsored by them, but I'm always talking about them. Let me just go ahead and drop the link in the chat here for people. VCVrack.com. If you don't see the chat, it's vcvrack.com. And the reason why, here, I'll pull it up on screen. The reason why I want you to know about this is just because it's a really great free modular synth software. It emulates the workflow of hardware modular synths. There's a lot of exact module copies, like digital modules that you can buy in Eurorack form, for a few $100s or whatever. You can get for free or for a very small amount on your computer, and you have access to thousands of free modules. So it's an amazing learning tool. I use it inside my class Learning Sound and Synthesis, which Nate was just talking about. And I also have the second thing that I just want to share really quickly with people, is a free class that I have put together that accompanies that first step into modular with VCV Rack. So I'm just going to drop that link too. It's a little bit of a longer one, so I won't shout it out there, but it's in the comments. And if you're watching this and the comments aren't showing up and you want the link, just leave me a comment, tag me, and I'll give you the link to that free class. But basically, a whole big reason, we're going to get back to Nate, I promise, in a minute, but this is something I'm really passionate about, is learning about synthesis, learning about sound design, learning how to make your own music, learning about modular isn't something that you should need to have to go buy a whole bunch of gear to be able to do. You can do it with your computer. You can do it with an iPad or whatever you have. And I put together this free class to just help you get started, to see if it's something you like without needing to go buy a whole studio worth of gear. Okay. Now, I'm so glad you brought that up, Nate, because I think a lot of people probably do feel that way, and it can feel like a huge barrier to entry, right?
Yeah. And VCV Rack was crucial for me to take that step, because I saw your class and I said, oh, that looks really cool, but I can't I don't have the stuff to do that. And then I saw, oh, it uses VCV rack. What's that? And it
Yeah.
blew. I keep using this phrase, but yeah, it really surprised me how great it is and how flexible and the amount of modules available. So yeah, I'm a huge VCV rack booster, and it was the final thing that had me sign up for the class,
Yeah.
and was the kind of the final step to actually getting into this stuff was VCV rack for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to give them all a big high five.
Hmm.
It's awesome. Okay, so let's go back. Let's continue on in your story a little bit. So you jumped into the world of modular, you signed up for learning sound synthesis. Let's kind of fast forward. I'm curious to hear from you what some of your biggest accomplishments were, or your biggest takeaways. Like, what happened as you moved forward in the months that followed?
Um, it felt really. It's hard to explain. I went from being just totally mystified by kind of any amount of modular synthesizer arrangement in front of me to just I just realized that one day I was sitting down and just kind of doing it, and I wasn't really dwelling on it anymore. And I think it was the way that the material was presented in the course. It just built up so nicely from such a nice foundation, and it gave me a starting point, and it meant like now I do the thing that used to terrify me, which is like I go into stores like Control Voltage in Portland or Perfect Circuit, and I can go and I can sit and I can just start playing with their demo stuff, and I can quickly look and figure out like where are the voices, where are the outs, where and so the vocabulary and the grounding that I learned really helped me get that footing. And so that just built up to the point where one day I realized I was reaching because I started by mixing modular synthesizer stuff kind of in with what I was doing traditionally, which is no
Yeah.
input feedback for the most part. And I just realized one day I was reaching more and more and more for modular stuff and had more plans and more schemes. And so it was a very gradual experience, which is super interesting. Yeah, there was
Yeah.
not really like a eureka moment in terms of using it in the studio.
I think that's good to say, though, because I think a lot of the time people, I mean, I can speak for myself. When I'm learning new things, like I sometimes feel like, when is this going to click? Like, when am I going to get that eureka moment? And sometimes concepts will click for sure. That might feel like oh wow, like I get that thing now. But overall, it's a slow, gradual process that you might not even really notice is happening. And the more that you do it, the more comfortable and familiar it becomes. And then, yeah, like you said, one day you're kind of looking back and you're like, interesting. That would have freaked me out 6 months ago. And by the way, I can relate to the feeling of being nervous about walking into a synth shop. That is something I very much can relate to. Where I'm like, I want to try, but I am so anxious about this. You're not alone. Okay, amazing. So, was there anything? I'm always curious to hear from people. Did you just go through everything step by step in the order of the class? And was there anything special that you did that helped you integrate things, or you just kind of jumped in and went?
I just went, yeah,
You just did it. Okay.
yeah, linearly. Yep, yeah. If I went non-linearly, I would have very much lost track and gotten confused and lost. So yeah, I went step by step, which it worked perfectly for me because I think the sequence was laid out really well. So.
I'm glad to hear that. Okay, is there anything else that comes up to when we were talking beforehand? You mentioned a little bit also about some things that weren't as focused on technical development, like sharing, kind of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable with sharing your work with people. Can you talk a little bit more about some of those things?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so one really transformative thing that happened while doing the course is actually working through the kind of historical module. So about the part of the course that's about just the history of synthesis in general and tape music, and that has really, a lot of the course has stuck with me in terms of technical skills. But the thing that like looms really big for me in my mind and emotionally is that module. And I'm so glad it was there because I knew a lot of those names of these historical figures, like Pauline Oliveros has been one of my heroes forever. But what I kind of left that module with was the sense that these people who we now look back on as pioneers and these important musicians, they were weirdos experimenting with a thing that no one took seriously,
Yeah.
and they were making sounds nobody wanted to hear. And so I really like Luigi Russolo, for example, and this early noise, first noise musician is a dangerous term, but this guy who was just like almost trying to offend people, these blasting walls of noise. So I've known about him for a long time, but these other figures like really trying to create entirely new instruments with this new technology,
Yes.
that spirit reminded me of myself. But then I look at myself and I'm like, well, I don't take myself seriously. I'm insecure and defensive. And so so kind of realizing like, okay, I can let go of some of that insecurity and that defensiveness because like I'm following in this tradition of people that I really look up to. Which is not to say that I'm like the next Pauline Oliveros. I don't have, I'm not, it's not an arrogance thing. It's just like a comfort thing. Like, oh, okay, I don't need to be so defensive about my work. And
Yeah.
music isn't like you're a musician or you're not. It's not this binary. It's about chasing sound and just being inspired by it. So like I had that florid language when we started the chat, but that's kind of language I arrived at like post LSS. Before that, I was this kind of secretly really embarrassed noise musician who wishes that I could be a more like real musician or whatever. So my idea of what it means to do music has really changed because of that module, I would say. So
Oh,
yeah, that was really,
yeah.
really big.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I'm so happy to hear that that module impacted you in the way it did, because that was 100% my goal.
Nice.
Like, of course, knowing the history is really important, but that whole module that Nate's talking about is framed in a way that's not just here's a history of synthesis. It's really framed to show you that these early pioneers, these like people that we look at as like, oh, they must have been a genius. I mean, of course, these people were brilliant, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the time, they didn't know what they were doing. They were curious. They asked, what if I try this? They made mistakes. Things didn't go as planned. And instead of going, oh my God, I failed, I'm so stupid, that's embarrassing, they went, oh, that's weird. That's not what I expected. Let's see if I can do it again. Let's see if I can turn that into something like feedback, like all of this stuff. And it's really such an important and valuable thing to embrace, because learning anything, but certainly learning something like modular synthesis, it's full of, oh, I didn't mean to do that. That's going to be like every second sentence out of your mouth for a while. Why is that happening? And the more curious you can be about it, as opposed to like reactionary that you've screwed up, the more potential you have to learn something and grow and find something beautiful and unexpected. It's funny you mentioned Pauline, because when you were at the beginning of this conversation, Nate, when you were talking about your whole, approach to finding stuff in the trash and building these instruments, I was reminded of one of the stories in module 1 of learning sound and synthesis that I share, where Pauline Oliveros was recording with like a little Sears tape recorder, and she was using long cardboard tubes to filter the sound because she just didn't have access to fancy equipment. And she's like, it's not going to stop me. I'm going to make the coolest piece of music ever, way before anyone else thinks it's cool. And I'm going to filter these things through tubes because that's what I have. And I don't have reverb. So I'm going to go into my bathroom and like
Yep.
reamp this in my bathtub. And like, it's
Hmm.
that spirit of just scrappiness that I think is so special. And I
Yeah.
see that in you for sure. Like you're
Yeah.
carrying that forward in your own way, which is so awesome.
Yeah. That story it hit me real hard. Yeah. It really, I felt like it was yeah, that was a eureka moment for me, was hearing that story specifically
Yeah.
about Pauline
Thank you,
Oliveros.
Pauline, for being
Yeah.
so awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, you mentioned the community aspect. I did want to mention that's also been really helpful. I actually didn't know when I signed up for the course that there was this whole forum community that came with it. But I've been really really grateful for it, and I've kind of been yearning for a long time to replicate this great experience I had in college, where um, we had these great practice rooms. They were like these soundproofed booths. There was, I think,
Mhm.
3 or 4, and we were like 4 bands to a booth. Like we were crammed in there, and we would practice all weird times a day. And what ended up happening was this great back and forth creatively. It was like, I was really lucky. There was a great music scene at the where I went when I went, and so we would just hear each other practicing and would just talk, oh, that's a cool thing. Oh, what are you using? Oh, let's maybe play next time. We do a live thing. We'll play together. And so I've just always really wanted that experience again, as a very much post-college adult. And so that's kind of what the forum has felt like a little bit is, it's so fun to just look and see what people are posting and find people's SoundClouds and see what they're up to. I'm really obsessed with swamps and like swamp songs. And I was like, somebody else in the forum was posting swamp field recordings. Like they took their rig out to a swamp and played,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's just awesome. So it's like a even bigger and more varied version of the like communal practice area I had a long time ago. So that's been great, and I've been posting my tracks, and it's been really positive. And yeah, I don't have to just shove them in front of my family and friends anymore who don't really like noise music. So.
Okay, I just have to interrupt you to let you know, Nate, that the other person you were talking about who's into swamps is here watching, and I'm going to pull this comment up. Hi, Chris.
Awesome.
Talk about a small world, but also this just goes to show you I say that the learning sound synthesis community is one of the most incredible, creative, supportive, and just insanely interesting places on the internet. And I say that because I really believe it. And like people like Nate and Chris and all of these other folks are what make it that. Like you are all what make it so amazing. You out there watching might feel like you're the only person on the planet who is into the weird kind of music or sounds or ideas that you're into. And I just promise you that like when you join that community and you put yourself out there and you're like, hey, this is weird, but I'm really fascinated by like old sci-fi space travel and like growing orchids and like merging that together with long bicycle rides where I sonify the sound of the wheels spinning. Someone else is going to be like, oh yeah, I did that. Or I did something that could help you, or like, let's combine our ideas and work on a project together. And you're going to realize that you're part of a really amazing community. I just got so excited. Thank you all for dealing with my little outburst there. But that's amazing. Okay, so can you share more what's going on in your world now? Like you've had these, obviously you've developed a lot of new skills, a lot of new comfort on working with Eurorack and modular. You've had these new kind of shifts in the way that you're approaching embracing your own sound chasing and music making, which I think is really awesome. Where has that led you? Are you making new music? Are you doing, I guess just update us on that.
Yeah, sure. So so I have a new album coming out hopefully at the end of the year, and it is very, very, Eurorack forward. And my music, I've mentioned, like used to be very, very harsh noise oriented. And that was one of the things that I always struggled with, was when I wanted to make something quieter or softer, I really struggled to. Like I was used to just like, no, blast the feedback and process it as much as you can, and create these big textures. And so my new album is very, it's very soft. It's and it's very atmospheric, and each piece is a pretty unique arrangement of modular synthesis stuff. So
cool.
yeah, all combining it with I actually did vocals for the first time. Because you did the video about the Boss VT1, and I was like, oh my god, that thing seems really cool. So I got one, and I adapted this like World War I poem, and I don't like my vocals, so I VT1'd it into an unrecognizable state and mixed that with some stuff. But yeah, so it's a each track is pretty unique. There's not really a consistent theme, so I'm gonna release that, and then I think probably maybe double down on one of those approaches. So either guitar and modular or voice and modular, and just see where it goes.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to share a link to your website in the chat for everyone so that people who are curious to check out some of your pre-existing music. This is also, I'm assuming, will be updated when the new album's out, right?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, so graveyardtheory.net. I'm putting that in the chat. 1 second. I'm also going to pull it up on the screen so that people can see it, just in case the comments aren't coming through for some reason. I can't wait to hear that. Do you have an estimated, like, is it December, October? Is this too much pressure?
No, it's fine. Well, so like I'm really stuck on doing a music video. I'm like I can't. I really want to do it. Never done one before, so that's kind of what's holding me up. The music is pretty much done.
Oh, great.
And but I'm trying to edit. I went and took a handy cam out to Point Reyes in up here in Northern California, and I took a whole bunch of spooky footage of fog and elks, and I'm trying to get that all edited together. So that's, the estimate is basically whenever I'm done learning video editing and have finished that. So yeah, December is what I'm targeting though. So.
Okay, amazing. I can't wait to see and hear. Please keep us posted. Don't be shy. And I also want to say, for any of you who are watching, listening to this, if this conversation is resonating with you, if you're feeling like you want to get into the world of Eurorack or modular, I already shared that free class with you. Send me a message if for some reason you missed the link, and I'll happily get that over to you. That's a great place to get started. The other thing, of course, that I would love to invite you all to check out is my class, Learning Sound and Synthesis, which is what Nate's been talking about. I'm going to go ahead and drop a link to the waitlist in the comments. And if you're curious, you can join the waitlist. The next round to Learning Sound Synthesis opens in spring of 2024. And this class is a super, super comprehensive step-by-step program that walks you through everything that you need to know to make music with modular. From the very, very beginning of how these things work and what modular even is and how sound works and why we hear the way we do, all the way to building complex patches, making your own music. Of course, as we talked about at length, there is a really big chapter all about history and finding your own inspiration and composing with modular. So it's a very, very comprehensive program. And then, of course, if you're craving that sense of community, togetherness, collaboration, having groups of people to bounce ideas around, this is another really big part of the Learning Sound and Synthesis thing. So it's all there for you. You can join that waitlist if you want to hear more about it in spring 2024 when the next round opens up. Nate, I want to wrap up with just by volleying back over to you. Is there anything else you want to say or share with the world? Sorry, that's too much pressure. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, don't think about the gear. Think about the sound, and think about the sounds that excite you, and really focus on that. And when you hear something in your mind that you want to hear with your ears, go figure out, try to learn how to get there, and but don't. I don't know. I don't believe in putting technique and gear first. Technique and gear is there to help you get to the thing that inspires you. So sit quietly and dwell on that inspiration and just see what's moving you and kind of let that guide you, and don't get freaked out about the nuts and bolts of it so much. Is what I would say.
Oh, that's so good. It's all going to come together, but following your sound first. Mm-hmm. Follow what lights you up. Follow it even if no one else is doing it. Follow it even more if no one else is doing it.
For sure.
It's so good. I just noticed one of the things that you said too, which I think is very in line with this, is you said that these days your practice is slower and you're recording less actually, and you're experimenting more. Yeah.
I've slowed way down, and I mean with more DIY unpredictable stuff, I don't know, it's just like get in, get out. Like I don't know what's going to happen. I'll never hear this again, grab it. And that's a big reason why I switched to doing a lot more modular stuff, is I can have very reproducible, practicable setups. So I take my time a lot more. I set something up and then I leave, come back 2 days later, explore it again, and I can build up a piece over time. And that's been really fun. Yeah, I've been really enjoying that. It's a totally different like mode of doing music for me that suits old me. 30s me is very happy to be slow. 20s me was like rage, get it all out. And so I'm really thrilled to have this like new approach. It's yeah, unlocked a lot of like mental creative blockage that I was having in my early 30s. So
Amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you for joining us and having this amazing conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your music. I just want to remind people, go click on that link, graveyardtheory.net, save that, check it out. And Nate, we will wait with bated breath. I was just rhyming away there. We will wait for news of your album coming soon. I can't wait to hear it when
sounds
it's
great.
available. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.